At once an allegory and an indictment of the American dream, John Steinbeck's The Winter of Our Discontent is a novel of such beautiful depth that one could very well drown. And don't be fooled by its length. Though it's only a shade under 300 pages, the novel is dense and many of its passages read like poetry, including the one that I can very well say rescued me from myself at a time when I was certain all was lost. As always, before we begin, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. What's your favorite novel, passage, or quote from John Steinbeck? Steinbeck's The Winter of Our Discontent explores the profound moral and ethical dilemmas the novel's protagonist, Ethan Allen Hawley, faces to exhaustion. The title draws from the famous line in Shakespeare's Richard III, quote, "Now is the winter of our discontent," unquote. Set in a small New England town, the novel follows Ethan, a once respected man from an old declining family who works as a grocery store clerk. Facing tremendous financial struggles and societal pressures, Ethan grapples with the temptation to compromise his principles in order to finally achieve success. The novel delves into themes of greed, morality, and the impact of societal expectations on an individual's integrity. As Ethan navigates the complexities of his choices, the story reflects on the changing landscape of the American dream and the erosion of traditional values. I pored over Steinbeck's short novel during a time in my life when I was entrenched in menial jobs with seemingly no way out in a manner eerily similar to Ethan Hawley. Even humble expectations of who I could be or become had diminished, and life seemed to lead toward an inevitable fall off the narrow precipice of unrequited hope. I had drifted far, far away from who I once thought I could be. The siren song of despair began to whisper in my ears. I can still recall the caress of a warm breeze during a drunken summer night as I stood 14 stories atop a building, overlooking the ominous lights of downtown Los Angeles, contemplating one final leap into dark oblivion. As always, literature provided a source of salvation when I needed it most. And please, listener, there are spoilers ahead, and though they don't necessarily take away from the full scope and depth of Steinbeck's The Winter of Our Discontent, please consider before listening any further. The summation of Ethan Hawley's morally hazardous choices culminate in a moment of peak despair. In the dead of night, he leaves his family and home one final time, though not before his young, sleepy, and prescient daughter stumbles to embrace him and slips unnoticed a good luck charm into his pocket he often refers to as a talisman throughout the novel. Resignation and defeat have finally settled deep into his tired bones, dead weights dragging him down into a seemingly inevitable choice down a hopeless abyss, and the desperate scene reads like perfect poetry in my estimation. And not only because of its eloquence, but because Steinbeck, more than any other American writer, can so perfectly capture sentiment in a manner that demonstrates his empathetic and emotive genius. Steinbeck writes in the voice of Ethan Hawley, quote, "The tide was on the rise. I waded into the warm bay water and clambered into the place. A slow groundswell moved in and out of the entrance, flowed through my trousers. The fat billfold in my hip pocket swelled against my hip and then grew thinner under the weight as it water-soaked. My skin blazed under the lances of the jellyfish. I heard an anchor plunge, and the mast light went out. It isn't true that there's a community of light, a bonfire of the world. Everyone carries his own, his lonely own. My light is out. There's nothing blacker than a wick. Inward, I said, I want to go home. No, not home, to the other side of home, where the lights are given. It's so much darker when a light goes out than it would have been if it had never shone. The world is full of dark derelicts. There comes a time for decent, honorable retirement. Not dramatic, not punishment of self or family, just goodbye. A warm bath and an opened vein, a warm sea and a razor blade. The groundswell on the rising tide wished into the place, and raised my legs and hips and swung them to the side, and carried my wet folded raincoat out with it. I rolled on one hip and reached into my side pocket for my razor blades, and I felt the lump. Then in wonder I remembered the caressing, stroking hands of the light bearer. For a moment it resisted coming out of my wet pocket. Then in my hand it gathered every bit of light there was, and seemed red, dark red. A surge of wave pushed me against the very back of the place, and the tempo of the sea speeded up. I had to fight the water to get out, and I had to get out. I rolled and scrambled and splashed chest deep in the surf, and the brisking waves pushed me against the old sea wall. I had to get back, had to return the talisman to its new owner, else another light might go out." Unquote. I can't overstate this enough. This particular passage from Steinbeck's masterpiece and the whole novel itself rescued me from the depths of my own despair and suicidal thoughts. It's borderline miraculous. Again, I can still see my younger self, taking in the panoramic heights above the city of angels, still drunk and swaying in that warm breeze that almost felt like an invitation toward the edge. I remember my legs buckled, and I had to steady myself before I finally turned around, else another light might go out.